Good evening. It's 8 o'clock on the West Coast. I'm Gil O'Reilly, and this is Right Along Radio, where the spin stops here. Hey, I'm Gil, and as you can see, or maybe you can't see just yet, but George Holt is not. He's not with us tonight. He's out there training people to do something. So George isn't in studio, but in studio, straight from the compound, straight from the off-the-grid compound somewhere in the mountains at an undisclosed location. You know him, you love him, Kent Lee.
George's black brother from a different mother.
No, you're the white privileged brother. That's who you are.
Somebody has to do this.
So Kent, it's been a minute since you've been here. So what's going on? Get the audience caught up on Kent Lee, because I see that you're sporting your Spec Ops, mandatory Spec Ops beard.
My Taliban beard.
Oh, it's your Taliban beard.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
American Taliban, I suppose.
Somebody conned me into growing this, and I've kind of become accustomed to it. I shaved it once, and I didn't like what I saw after that, so I grew it back.
Well, we're glad to have you here. As you know, if you watch the podcast at all, the video upload the next day, sometimes George gets out of hand. He gets out of hand, and we have to put George in his place, and so it's nice to have you in when he's not here.
I have to tell you, I actually didn't see it. I was going to watch it and it escaped me, but I can just imagine what he said.
Well, he's I don't know what to say. All I can do is raise my fist in the air in solidarity with him. That's all I can do. But anyway, so it's nice to have you. I appreciate you coming in to help me kind of drive the ship here tonight. So I'm going to get right to the news of the day. In case, I don't know if you knew or not, but it was Election Day in Los Angeles again. It was a couple days ago, May 16th. And one of the measures that was on the ballot box there thing was Measure C. And Measure C was, passed by the voters. And so I guess it changes the city charter and allows now for LAPD officers who are facing the Board of Rights, instead of just having two command staff and one civilian, they can opt for an all-civilian board. So we have, I think we have, our guest is going to be here in just a second, Craig Lally, who's the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League. And he was kind enough to agree to jump on the phone with us and talk about this and what the implications are for police discipline at LAPD. So, Craig, welcome to the show again, brother. Appreciate you being here.
Pleasure to be on your show again.
Hey, listen, so it was Election Day in Los Angeles the other day, and apparently the voters approved Measure C. So just real quickly, tell us what it was and why the league supported it.
Well, basically, our current border rights system consists of two captains and a civilian. And there's an inherent conflict, possibly, because the two captains work directly for the chief of police. And so when he recommends termination, they basically, there creates a conflict where if the chief recommends termination, there's a possibility that they won't even look at the evidence and basically find the officer guilty of misconduct because they could be ruining their promotions, job assignments, that kind of thing. So this alleviates that problem because it would go to three civilians who the chief has no connection to. And I just think it's a much fairer process.
Wow, when I saw the your Facebook ads and promoting the measure prior to the election, I was a little bit surprised that the league was supportive of it because from my perspective, I think civilian oversight of a police department just doesn't make much sense. So, but which civilians are going to be sitting on these boards? It's not going to be like the disband, disarm the police, activist, protester kind of citizen, right? Or is it?
No, we currently have, we do have one civilian on the current border rights system, and it's a very good criteria to actually become a member of that panel. There's approximately 38 people on the panel right now, and it's a pretty high standard. Most of them are attorneys. They have to have some kind of background in disputes resolution, but they're very, very qualified right now, and that's why we want to go to it, because of the qualifications are a very high standard, and we don't want to. Obviously, we don't want to lose that and lower the standards to bring particular groups in.
Right. That was my concern about, because I don't know who these 38 civilians are. I don't know how they were selected. I didn't even know there was a process, or how does one even become a civilian to get on that board?
Well, basically, they every once in a while, the Board of Police Commissioners puts out, you can apply to it, and basically, depending on if there's any vacancies, then they oral for the position. You put in your application just like you do for any job application, and then they vet it out, and then they become comprised of this pool of 38, which might be expanded because we're going to, instead of having one civilian on the board like we do currently,
right,
we will have to put it up to two more additional ones. So we might have to expand the board. We're not really sure if we're going to expand it or not. We might just give those 38 people more work. Thus, we won't really have to, obviously, expand the current system.
Right. Well, so how does the rank and file feel about this? Were they? I guess they were supportive of the measure as well. I knew that the league administration was, but what about the rank and file officers? Are they feeling okay about going in this direction?
Well, what's really good about this situation is, it's an option for the officers. When the officer gets accused of misconduct, no matter what it is, they have an option to go to the two captains of civilians, the current board, or they can opt for the three civilians. What's great about it is it gives them an opportunity. It's almost like if you're alleged a crime against you, where you have a choice between a judge trial or a jury trial.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to that, where it would put the officer at ease, whereas the current system, officers are really scared of the current system because of the fact is that, especially if they have a high-profile shooting or high-profile use of force, they don't think they're going to get a fair shake, because the department, just to get rid of the officer, will make them look good, and then basically they can get rid of the situation by just firing the officer, which they probably don't even have to look at the evidence, to just wash their hands of the situation.
Right. I mean, I don't know how, I was worried about civilians who have no knowledge of use of force, have no knowledge of the use of force continuum, no knowledge of the Peace Officers Bill of Rights, no knowledge of the California Penal Code. I was just wondering, how are these people, going to make decisions? But so I know.
Well, we actually educate them, because just like in a criminal trial, both parties bring in experts. Court-qualified experts, and
right,
educate them, just like they would in any criminal activity if a person is alleged to have committed.
Right. Because I know that's been a point of contention, in the city for a long time in discussions in police circles, is that a lot of officers, I guess, view the disciplinary process over there as pretty unfair and political. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, there's always a possibility of being political when you have two it's a very unique situation. There's no discipline system like this in the country, where they have two captains who basically work for a chief of police, who actually sends down what his recommendation is and what he believes to be the finding, and that's the whole problem. It's a very unique set of circumstances where no department in the country has this. This board of rights system has been in place since 1935, when Chief Parker.
Wow.
When he was cleaning house.
Well, yeah, because back then you had a clean house, and
right,
and at the time, you wanted to make sure there was no political influence, so that's why they kind of devised a system, because they were afraid that back then, and there's no secret, everything was corrupt. The police department was corrupt. The mayor's office was corrupt. City council was corrupt. So.
Wow,
to try to fix that.
Not too different than today, huh, Craig?
Well, you know what? I wasn't back in 1935. I don't know how bad that was back then, but it just gives the officer an option that they have at their fingertips to make them more comfortable. Like I said, it's just like going to a judge trial or a jury trial. They get the opposite of that.
There are always bad guys. They just change their hat. Maybe they're sitting in another chair a decade later, but there's always an adversarial relationship.
Of course.
That's funny. So, talking about politics influencing, I caught the news conference. I don't know if you saw it the other day, Craig, with Chief Beck, and they were talking, and I guess the federal agents there was some task force, and they arrested a bunch of MS gang members in a pretty big case. And one of the first questions a reporter asked the chief was, how come ICE wasn't involved? Because you had ATF, you had LAPD, you had all these agencies, U.S. Marshals, a whole bunch of people working on this case. And I guess half of the people arrested were illegal aliens. And so that was one of the questions. And the chief kind of bristled at the question and then went into why the sanctuary city policies, helped them make their case. I was just wondering how you guys felt about that press conference.
Well, it is political. And, it's kind of nonsensical where here you have ICE, who's a federal law enforcement agency, where we should be working hand in hand to get the criminals and put them in jail, and then after we put them in jail to deport them if they're here illegally. It just doesn't make much sense to me where we're kind of we don't work hand in hand with other law enforcement agencies because of the political pressure. So, as a law enforcement officer, I don't understand the logic behind that, because our duty and the duty of the politicians is the first thing they're supposed to do is keep the city of Los Angeles safe and the country safe and the state safe. And
right.
they're kind of like ignoring all that.
Craig, I've got a question for you. This is Kent. How you doing?
Good, sir.
Good. The civilian panel members, are they paid in that capacity?
Yeah, they are. They are paid per diem per day. I don't know what that dollar amount is, but they are paid.
Would you have any problems if you were being disciplined of going before a civilian review board?
No, I would absolutely. If I was accused of misconduct because of my current position, I'm pretty much adversarial on a lot of stuff that the department does. I would definitely, if they have accused me of misconduct, I would definitely go down the path of the 3 civilians, because I know that politics could be coming in play if they recommended termination on me. So I would be very leery of the current system. I would definitely opt for the 3 civilians.
I would do the same thing.
Craig, aren't there any command staff over there that would be supportive of the officers? I mean,
yes, they're just not on the panel.
Well, you know what? They generally are, but the problem is, why would you want to put the stress on a command staff officer? And this helps the command staff, because they can go back and to their commands and actually command the divisions where they work and not have to deal with these border rights systems. I've never met a captain in my 36 years that I've had on the job that actually wants to do this, because they're so busy doing their real job, which is
right.
trying to work their commands. And so there's not really the problem we have is, some of our captains are very, very strong. They don't care what the chief of police determines on a termination case. They'll do the right thing. But why would you want to put these people under that stress where basically if an officer is accused of misconduct, the chief has already basically said, I want this person terminated, and then there's a potential you don't even look at any of the evidence because you're scared to death of your next assignment,
right.
Or it's just a system that's built in. It's got flaws in it. It's got flaws
right.
in the entire system. So it's a unique situation.
Well, listen, Craig, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Thanks for the update, and thanks for always taking the time for the Ride Along Radio Show. We really appreciate you being on with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and call me anytime. Thank you very much.
Thanks. That was Craig Lally. He's the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and they are the union that for the rank and file officers over at the department. And he's become a good friend of the Ride Along Radio Show, and he's been a guest a couple times now. And so whenever there's something new happening over there, I like to get Craig on to talk about it and let us know. So in the other news, I guess last week we talked about and I don't know if you saw it or not, Kent, but there was a shooting in Balch Springs, Texas. I guess it's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And an officer, they were on a radio call, and officer with a rifle ends up shooting a teenager in the head in a vehicle that was pulling away from him. And so there was that officer he was fired immediately by his department. He lied to the department about what happened. He said they were backing at him with the car, and when they pulled the body cam footage, they saw the vehicle was actually driving away. And as it was driving away, he was firing at the car with his rifle, for God's sakes, and he hit a high school football player, with no criminal history, no gang affiliation, nothing, and shot him in the back of the head and just terminated his life there. So the officer was fired immediately, and then he's being charged. But the same department put out another video, and it was floating around Facebook, and I thought it was kind of interesting because I thought when George Holt posted this video, I thought he was going to call for a Black Lives Matter protest for the officer involved. But so we have the video. I want to run that video real quick and then get your take on it, Kent.
About the taser?
Yes. It's a Balch Springs PD sergeant.
Oh, you get to be wow. 65, one in custody, be Marco Stevens.
Oh.
Oh, you get to be wow. 65, one in custody, be Marco Stevens. Make sure you bring that BB gun.
Station 30, go and confirm the warrants out of us.
Oh, I got a BB gun. I'm C. Ward. It's a BB gun. And now go them kids, they witnesses it's a BB gun.
Yeah, well,
It's a BB gun.
on you.
I didn't do nothing. It's a BB gun. They right there, they my witness. I was talking to them, joking with them about a movie, Boys in the Hood. I can't help what somebody else's perception is.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
That's all.
It's their
BB gun.
perception that counts.
It's
They
a BB
perceived it
gun.
as a threat, so you are under arrest.
How was it a threat? I was with some kids.
They perceived it as a threat.
Oh my God. Now you can't have a BB gun. I'm over 18, so I can have a
Well,
BB
you're
gun.
also acting up, too. We've had to deal with you just about every day for... You got a knife? Just got it off of it.
No, you can just pull down the string.
No,
You can wait till I get to jail and take it out.
Better watch it, Marco.
I spit a toothpick in the grass.
Yeah, and the next time you'll eat grass.
You might get that for me. Oh!
Don't pull away.
You understand?
You understand?
All right,
Don't pull
man.
away. You understand?
Don't pull away.
Don't pull away. You get it? Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Are you going to straighten up?
Yes, sir.
Because I ain't playing with you today. Do you understand? Do you
Yes, sir.
understand?
Yes, sir.
Now, we're going to get up, and you're not going to do anything stupid again. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Wow. So apparently, this is somebody that they know, and they've been dealing with them all week, apparently. And the radio call they received was a man brandishing a gun.
Okay, so he was pointing it at somebody.
It was brandishing. I don't know if he pointed at anybody, but somebody perceived what he was doing with it as a threat, called 911, and the police responded, and then, that was then that's where the cams come on.
Did you see him resist?
No.
Not from that angle.
No.
Yeah, and when I see that, I go, okay. And so I some of these things happen, and you see it. Somebody else might not, even at just a slightly different angle or a degree.
Right.
Didn't look like he did, but hard for me to second guess him. But it's the attitude,
Right.
that I'm having a problem with.
Right,
You know?
and when I saw this, and I saw George Holt's kind of post about this, and I was reading the comments below, and he's got a lot of cops also that follow him on Facebook, and so I like to cause
Mayhem.
Not mayhem, but, I like to make people think, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just wrote, I could see the guy taking a couple days on the bricks and retraining on the taser. It's not like he killed anybody. And the suspect, he kind of brought that on himself, to some degree, and producer for the POTUS is having a response back there in the ops room there, but I just thought I said, okay, this looks like, I tell you what it looks like to me. It looks like contempt of cop. Mm-hmm. He just didn't like. He'd been dealing with the dude all week. This is a sergeant, for God's sake.
Looking for a reason to tase him. Someone.
Well, I don't think he was looking for a reason to tase him, but I just think and you know this, when you deal with the same knucklehead mm-hmm. day in and day out, mm-hmm. What was it I heard in Jackie Brown? I was watching Jackie Brown, and Sam Jackson said, "See, okay, that's what works my nerves. It works your nerves, for God's sakes. When you see the same guys over and over, and
you've had it,
and you're having the same.
You act out.
You're having the same conversation. Uh-huh. I'm not saying the officer was right. The officer should be disciplined, but he shouldn't be fired. I don't think he should be fired. I don't think he should be." Arrested or charged. I don't think. I think he should, probably take a couple days on the bricks, mm-hmm. no pay, and he probably should get retrained on that taser. Mm-hmm. The proper use of same for same.
Take his taser away from him.
So anyway, I just wondered.
I was trying to figure out why he tased him while he was on the ground too. So.
Well, then when he started to squirm around
from being tased and falling down.
Yeah. So he was saying what his command was, don't pull away. Don't pull away.
That's what got him tased the first time.
No, that's what got him tased the second time. It was don't pull away.
I didn't see that one either, but did you see him pull?
Well, I saw him rolling back and forth on the ground.
Reacting.
He was being tased.
Yeah. So, right. It's like having a dog biting your leg. Don't move.
Yeah.
If you stop moving, I'll take the dog off you.
Well, if you don't stop moving and you try to pull away, the dog just keeps pulling back.
Right.
And then your flesh turns to
mush.
Because the dog's not going to let go. Mm-hmm. The dog ain't going to. If my dog latches on, I got to damn near choke her out to get her to stop.
So was this the same department where the shooting happened?
Yes, it was the same department, and that's why.
Was the sergeant involved in that?
No. No, that wasn't the sergeant. But one of the questions that George was raising on Facebook was, is there a pattern in practice, of this department, using excessive force and against, African Americans in the community? So. I don't know.
Yeah. I was just trying to figure out what would happen if the guy was black, the sergeant was black.
Well, I mean, even if the sergeant was black, it's still wrong.
Right, but then it doesn't become, use of force on. A pattern and practice for the Department of use of force on minorities if the sergeant happens to be black.
Then it would just be police brutality.
Yes,
it would just be police brutality.
Excessive. Different motivation.
But that's not even brutal, I don't think. I think that's just excessive force, right? Would you call that police brutality or excessive force?
Yeah, I'd probably call it brutality because it's a taser.
Brutality, huh?
Well, he's handcuffed. And he's being tased, and if there wasn't a good reason to tase the guy, obviously the guy went from supposedly, and I don't know, I can't see the angle, resisting to being on the ground and tased twice.
Well, he did something.
And after that, he was saying, "Yes, sir."
Yeah.
So something caused him to come.
Well, after he got tased the second time, he saw the light.
Right.
I think Jesus touched him.
The blue light.
No, not the blue light. It was the white light. Yeah. I like to say it was the white light of Jesus. That's what he saw. He was touched by the Lord.
Uh-huh.
You saw. Homie got right. You see what I'm saying? Homie got right quick.
If I was handcuffed and got tased a couple of times and I hadn't resisted, I'd be pretty pissed. To say the least, I wouldn't be saying yes, sir. Well, I'd be pissed.
That's because you're used to white privilege. So.
Yeah, well,
that's a whole different world. You live in a different world, and and this is kind of I'm joking to some degree, and I'm sure in the comment section below, I'll get those people will have some fine words for Gil. and George will be happy to read them all next week.
On air.
Yeah, he'll read them here. And Gil, you ought to take a glove and slap yourself. And I don't know what it's all kinds of crazy stuff.
Is it getting worse?
No, it's not getting worse. It's consistent, though.
Who named you Gil O'Reilly, by the way?
Some listener, apparently. Named me Gil O'Reilly, and, apparently he has a lot of time and Photoshop. So he took my head and put
Did he?
And put yes.
On Bill O'Reilly's body?
where the spin stops
they're
here.
calling you the brown Irish?
I
Black
don't
Irish?
know. I don't know. I think it was meant as a slight of some sort, but I was impressed. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I put it on my Facebook page. It's up there if anybody cares to see it. In fact, the head shot that he took was a picture that was taken in front of my mom's house. I was in uniform because me and my partner Scooby Doo, we had gone to my mom's house for Code 7. And so that was the photo my sister took of us by the car. And so he just took my head and put it on Bill O'Reilly's body, and I've become Gil O'Reilly. But I wanted to say to our producer that I had an opportunity to see the documentary. What's a nice way to say the name of that documentary? What's a nice way to say it? Burn MF Burn. It's on Showtime, and it's about the '92 riots. Because we had Tim McBride, who is the president, not the director, or no, he's the director. Craig's the president, the director of the LA Police Protective League. We did a show on the LA riots a couple weeks ago, and so he joined us to talk about that. So, and my whole premise was I had seen some of these documentaries, and seeing them now in 2017, where I am at this point in my life and in my head, it was just more aggravating and infuriating to watch now than even the impact that it had, when it occurred back then.
So it was good? The documentary was good?
Well, I thought some of them were pretty good in terms of historical context, and this one, and the producer is actually she's interviewed in the documentary, the Showtime one, and so, but I thought that some of the the way the parolees who started the rioting at Florence and Normandy, the way they were portrayed was just not accurate enough for me, and the whole piece left out of all of these documentaries that I've seen now, and there's been A&E, the History Channel, and now Showtime. And they're like 2-hour documentaries, they're not short. But in all of them, the thing that every one of them leaves out is the effect that narcotics activity on the black community, the effect it was having, and just how rampant drug sales of crack cocaine especially, how they were and how much money and how many guns and all that piece is all left out of every documentary that I've seen. If they mention it, they go, there was some criminal activity, but boy, the way the city responded to it was, was overdone. Yeah. And I remember also, I remember actually working Operation Hammer, where you went 1,000 police officers. 1,000 cops at Southeast Station. That's a pretty impressive sight. When you see 1,000 cops. Is this a caller, or is this our next guest?
Caller.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, before we go to our break, we're going to take one call and see who we got online. Caller, where are you calling from, and what's your name?
Gil Contreras. It's Eddie Goodman, your best friend.
Eddie Goodman. my second favorite liberal.
That's right. Listen, man, that tasing video was totally. Listen, you guys preach every week. Comply now, complain later. Now the kid, he might have been a knucklehead, and they, had run-ins with him or whatever. But he did comply. They ran up on him. They handcuffed him. He wasn't resistant.
Right.
And for the dude to tase him, it's just like, come on, man. I mean, when I watch that, it's like, it's sickening, dude, because it's like, how can we teach these kids? Because, I still work with kids and stuff like that in high school and junior high. And, I relay a message that, they should just go along with the police, comply now. And, and if they have any issues, they can always file a complaint. But when that stuff like that circulates online, it's kind of hard for us to tell kids just to go along with the program, and then they turn around and the guy just tased them, like, just. And I think he should be fired, because when you do stuff like that, it needs to send a strong message that when you behave like that, we won't tolerate it. No, he shouldn't be trained and 2 weeks off with training.
No, I said 2 days. I said 2 days. I said 2 days, Eddie, not 2 weeks.
No, man, he needs to be gone. He needs to be fired.
You want to fight? Should he be?
Take a stripe away from him. Let's take a stripe away from him.
Let's make him a corporal.
No, he should be fired, man, because that was you taking your authority. He was already in handcuffs, so he couldn't pose no threat. He was complying. He wasn't resisting anything like that, and it was personal. And you can't take your personal feelings and take it out on a person like that. You know
I agree.
What I mean? This was totally out of line.
It really sucks, Eddie. We can't argue with you about this.
I agree. But Eddie, let me ask you this: What do you think of the fact that after the suspect got tased the second time, he got right and he started saying yes sir, no sir? What do you make of that?
Hey, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, because I worked those neighborhoods doing security at the school.
I know you do. I know you did.
And I understand, but you gotta as you being a professional and you represent law and order, you gotta take the high road. You can't let what these kids say get to you personally. He's just a kid. I've been called everything but the son of God working at Locke High School, so I never took anything personal.
So I've been called everything too, but by you. Online.
There's one thing that I'm thinking about now is the fact that sergeants shouldn't be involved in doing this kind of stuff. Their job is to manage the people around them. Right. I'm sure he wasn't the one that handled the call. There were other officers there. He should have been, if anything, watching and directing the officer's activities if need be, because he's the one that has to come to a determination in the first line of investigation, just in case there is something that goes down like this. Sometimes you get supervisors who feel that because they're the supervisor, they're going to set the standard for everybody else, and I'm going to go apply this, do the use of force, and it's stupid to do. Yeah, it's really a bad way to go.
You know what, Eddie? You've won me over, brother. I think the sergeant should be fired. I think the sergeant should be fired.
That's right. All right, you guys take it easy.
All right, Eddie. Thanks for the call. All right. Well, listen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back from our break, we'll have veteran newsman, award-winning journalist David Cruz will be joining us, and we're going to talk about Trump, the FBI, Director Comey's firing, and a whole bunch more. We'll be right back. Man, that music, that's from the soundtrack of Gil's life. That's Willie Bobo's Nessa. I used to have that album when it was on vinyl, for God's sake. Well, listen.
You're old.
Yes, I am. I'm proud of it. So, listen, we're going to change directions here, and I want to bring on our next guest by telephone. He's a dear friend, a mentor, and award-winning journalist, veteran newsman. He's probably the smartest guy that I know personally. He's just the smartest guy that I know. David Cruz. David, are you on?
Hey, Gil, man, that is way too big. That only makes me older than you. Well, I can be your mentor. Hey, Gil, how are you, man?
I'm well, and just for those who don't know, I met David when I was doing public radio here in Los Angeles, and it was during my coverage of the North Hollywood shootout. And David was actually out there, and David was kind enough to come on my show and to talk about what he experienced out on the streets that day. And it's been friendship ever since. I've been a regular guest on David's shows when he was on the air here in L.A., local news guy. And David, I got to say, you're my mom's favorite guest. Whenever she knows you're going to be on, she tunes in.
Hi, Mom. How are you? I promised to treat your son gently tonight.
So that's for you, Mom. It was just her 82nd birthday last week.
Oh,
so.
my Lord.
Yeah.
May God give her many, many more.
Thank you. So anyway, listen, David, I wanted you to come on because I wanted to talk about a few things with regard to the president and the firing of James Comey last week, now the appointment of special counsel to look at this Russia interference with the elections. And as I said in the in your intro there, you're probably one of the smartest guys that I know, and I'm really interested in your take. But today, as I was doing research and just kind of updating myself on what's going on with all of this, I found an article by Glenn Greenwald, who broke the Ed Snowden story. And the title of his article, and this was written back in January of this year, his article was called "Empowering the Deep State to Undermine Trump is a Prescription for Destroying Democracy." And then he did a quick interview, a 10-minute interview on Democracy Now!, and neither The Intercept nor Democracy Now! Are right-wing by any stretch of the imagination. These are left-wing media outlets. And I just wonder, David, because this kind of deep state thing, while it may be everyday stuff to Kent Lee here, to me, I'm not as familiar with it. So I wanted to start there with you, David. What do you know about this term deep state, or what's your understanding of the term and what it means?
Well, I mean, I think that term is quite clever. It certainly is catchy. People can remember it. I'm going to, call it something different. I think that there are dark forces, Gil, that work with their own interests. I'm going to tell you, and it may sound cliche, but many years ago, I had a dear friend of mine who was my videographer. He was my shooter, we call him in the business, and he and I traveled for many years together, covering many assignments. He told me there would come a time in this country when people would be turned against each other because it benefits an unseen class, the super elite. And I'm not talking the 1%ers, Gil. Those could be part of it, but I'm talking about forces that have other agendas. Now, I know this sounds nutty. It almost sounds like a conspiracy thing. But what I'm telling you is that there are people who have no allegiance to our country. They may work here. They may have their companies based here. But their almighty God is the dollar, and they don't care how they make it. Now, how does that come into play in politics? I believe that everything in politics is about timing. And so the decisions by the president are being nitpicked by media. In turn, he, of course, reacts to what the media is doing.
Right.
But I think a lot of us are getting played in ways that even we don't know, Bill. That would be my opening statement to you.
But do you think, I'm going to ask Kent to give me his
Sure.
understanding of the deep state, if you will, in a moment. But as I understand it, and as Greenwald was talking about in his interview on Democracy Now!, he was talking about the intelligence community and, kind of establishment Republicans, establishment Democrats, like all these forces, and you called them dark forces, and I think that's a good term for them, who run the money and run the power and really don't want to give it up because Trump has come in and is doing things totally different and is not on either of their sides. And does that do you add the intelligence community in there?
Gil, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about powers that cross all lines, all kinds of labels. It is about retaining power at all costs. Some of it is driven by business. It's all about economics. And let me tell you, power, money, these are the things that drive them, and they will destroy anything that gets in their way. So here's what I am saying to you. Anything that threatens that super elite class, whoever they may be, and they may wear many, many different titles in our society, I believe that they will resist at all costs, because once you lose that power and the people have it, then, they have nothing more. That's what I believe, Gil.
Okay. Let me turn to Kent here for a minute. And David, Kent is, he was one of the original three. Originally, Right Along Radio was three of us, and it was George and I and Kent. And so George is out tonight, so Kent was gracious enough to come in. So Kent, what's your understanding of, quote, the deep state, close quote?
Well, I'd like to touch on something that David said, and I agree with all of that, but I would like to also say that they're just not there and existing in just for the purpose of power and controlling the money and having power. They actually have an agenda. They do things. They move stuff around the board and make things happen politically around the world.
Okay, let me
who's they?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. There are some of the things that David's talking about. There are people that are above and beyond the banking system or the investment bankers or the media. There are people that go back, and it's old money and it's ancient money, and they go back probably all the way to the 1700s, 1600s, and it is families. There are families that are deeply embedded in world politics.
So we're talking about the Rockefellers
and the Rothschilds and the rest of them. And you can go all the way back to the Bolshevik Revolution, where that was funded by the Rothschilds. They like to cause things to happen for political reasons, where they'll move money and move power for the purposes of gaining more power and more money and maintaining control. So they actually make things happen for specific reasons. And one of their major pushes right now is this is where the conflict with Russia comes in, I believe. Russia is gone through obviously a huge revolution and an evolution.
Right.
And they have been subject to this. Obviously, the Bolshevik Revolution. A lot of people have died. Putin is a byproduct of this, but Putin understands the state. The state he's not part of this. In the Far East, this is a Western Hemisphere phenomena, and they are actually trying to control the world, and they're trying to wipe out. I believe they're trying to wipe out borders, and they're trying to have this one world government. And the purposes of bringing refugees into countries is to flood it and wipe out ethnic balances and ideologies in those countries. They're trying to wipe out the nation state, and it's very deep.
So let me see. I'm just trying to get my head around this. So, because I saw an interview that Dennis Kucinich did on, I think it was Sean Hannity, and it may have been over the last couple of days. And I just saw it today. And Kucinich actually, David, says that what he sees happening with the Trump administration by the media and the intelligence community and both establishment political parties, he calls it a coup, for God's sakes. How does it look to you, David? Does it look like a coup of some sort happening right in front of our eyes on TV, on CNN at 8 o'clock?
Gil, I'm concerned about what I see. I've spent 43 years now in this business, and I have never seen such an outward expression of personal opinions and bias in reporting. And I have to tell you, I'm not a huge fan of Trump, but I respect the office. And when you see commentators who are, calling themselves reporters, making that kind of editorial judgment, that is a concern to me. And then you know what appeared today on the Time magazine cover, right?
Yes, I did. I saw that.
And so, you see something like that. But the media, who is the media? I think the rank and file, look, we're the soldiers. But the people at the top and the people behind that, they too know that something is shifting. And there's a lot of money at stake, Gil. And so I believe that there's a pushback. There's a pushback because if they lose control of that fifth estate, then they lose revenue. And it comes back to investors. It comes back to shareholders and retaining the value of that stock. Now, that may seem trite in comparison to saving a nation. But, hey, this is all stakes. They're going all out. No question about it.
But David, what do you think of what Kent was just talking about, and that is open borders, no state, kind of the breakdown of American culture, of French culture, through these progressive kind of immigration policies. What do you think of that? Do you does
well,
it look to you like?
Well, you call it progressive. I'm not a big guy on using labels, and here's why, Gil. I'm not sure that just progressives are behind this. I mean, when there's a bigger, larger agenda, then the whole world is your playground. And to me, I do agree that the migration is a global phenomenon that is happening right now, and it's out of control. But I don't think a wall alone is the solution. This is bigger than that, Gil. President Trump may have gone in thinking that he was going to be able to navigate these waters. Guess what? There's a lot of sharks. They wear many kinds of suits, labels, names, and titles, and he's finding it's a tougher go than he thought. But again, it comes from all directions, not just one party or one group.
Right, because Ken, I think that's what you're saying is that I don't think Trump expected the Republican Party, the establishment Republican Party, to work so hard to undo him.
Okay, so we are darting in and out of reality, what this is really about, and there's a program that exists that all of these people are part of. The Democrats, the Republicans. They're all part of this strategy.
You're talking about the politicians,
Absolutely.
Right?
Getting wrapped up with Democrats and Republicans and progressives and everything else, when you start talking about this, you're listening to and feeding into the narrative that they're giving you, and you're still playing in that reality. That's not the reality. What's happening now is a huge concerted effort to gain control of the world and the political systems, and
the monetary systems as well?
Yes, well, and they've got control of the monetary system. It's the Western Hemisphere. Now, where China is fitting into all this, I think they're very supportive of the whole globalist thing. That's what their president said after Trump was elected. Putin is not. Putin is a state guy, and that's the natural prerogative of people, is to identify with people that are like you. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have neighborhoods, and we have states, and we have territories, and we have tribes and all this. Right. He gets this. So they're trying to strangle that dude. They're trying to he's not playing, okay?
Well, they're trying to strangle Putin?
You better believe they are, because he's not going along with the program. And so this whole thing with Syria, it's not about a dictator. This has been a plan that even Wesley Clark, who was the general in the Balkans under Bill Clinton, who said they have a policy, a program, the CIA, that they're going to carry out, and he named 7 countries that they're going to knock off. Okay, so Iraq was one of them, Lebanon is one of them, Syria is one of them. Did I say Libya?
No, not yet.
Okay, Libya and Iran and Yemen, and there may be one other. And if you look at what's happened, what we started a war in Libya. We were behind the support of the assassination of Gaddafi. All of this is happening. The game is being played. So listen, here's what they want to do with Syria. They want to run a pipeline because the Russians have control of natural gas to Europe. That's where they get their leverage from, because their economy is not very strong. There's only 135 million people in that massive country, and they're trying to run a gas pipeline in from the either Qatar or United Arab Emirates, and they're going to take it through Syria, through Turkey, and into Europe, and they're going to cut off one of the main money supplies for the Russians. That's why Putin is in Syria, and he's not going to let this happen. This is the geopolitical game that's going on right now.
All right, so let me stop you right there, and then let me turn back to you, David. You've been a news guy for a long time. How does all of this sound to you?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think what Kent just pointed out in the picture he painted, guess what? It's very realistic, but as he used the term, and I think it's the most appropriate one. We're not playing checkers here. This is chess, and the game and the prize is geopolitical. This is global politics like we've never seen it before. You know what concerns me, Gil, is a country like North Korea edging us all closer towards doom and gloom. And I don't want to sound that way, but I think about it a lot. I check in on what they're doing each and every day. Maybe I'm playing into their hand. But look, I've been a reporter mostly on the domestic side, although I covered Central America and I did cover the Pacific Rim. But this world, the way it's percolating now, the way it's reaching that boiling point, we need a strong president. We need a unified country behind him. And there's a lot of divisiveness going on right now. I would like to see us talk more about how we can come together rather than how we can stay apart. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, and maybe my perspective is way smaller, but and I've kind of paid attention to what's happened in the United States, and I'm old enough to have, come up in the late '60s and the early '70s, and I remember that America when I was in high school, and so. I've always I've seen this shift, and it concerns me. My parents were Democrats, David. They were Kennedy Democrats, and when President Kennedy was assassinated, my family, I remember them in the living room watching TV and crying because their president had been killed. They really felt like America had died that day. Right. And then, as Bobby Kennedy came along, and there was this resurrection of hope. And then when he was assassinated in '68, that to me that was when the America that I knew kind of died, and then began this path to this other thing. And in 2017, I don't even recognize my own country. This is not the America that I grew up in. And those are the things that concern me, and so I do use the term progressive because I think in addition to these bigger things that are happening globally, the way it's happening here at home is this kind of progressive takeover of city governments. Now the police chief in Los Angeles. Now the state wants to be a sanctuary state. We've decriminalized crime. Half the country, half of California. Voted for Prop 57, Prop 47, Prop 64. Governor Brown came up with AB 109. Is this decriminalization of crime, refusing to enforce immigration laws, not wanting to work with ICE, the Department of Homeland Security, for God's sakes? That's the decline that I see, and that's what scares me. And those are the things that I worry about, even more so than what's happening in North Korea. And I might be wrong about that, but that's where I'm at.
That's not a decline. That's intentional. All of this has been intentional,
right? But that's my question. Is it by whom to gain what? What do we gain by adopting these progressive public safety policies and open borders? What does anybody gain from that?
You're gaining a breakdown of our society. How do you take over a country unless you break down the systems? And the structure, including family, including church.
Kent, let's not be hypocrites. Business in California loves foreign labor. Let's admit it. The Indian engineers who are brought in, the Europeans who are brought in, the Mexicans who are brought in. I mean, look, our economy thrives off of that. So let's not ignore the obvious. They feed into the machine, don't they?
Yeah, but I think that's all part of an intentional thing. You create massive unemployment for Americans here, and you create a larger welfare system, and you bring in foreign labor. It's debilitating, but it also creates this movement of people and jobs all over the world. I think this is. I don't think this is.
With that, I agree. With that, I agree, because I do agree we have lost American jobs to other nations. But I would tell you, if you got rid of every farm worker in America today, how much would a tomato cost me? How much would a watermelon cost us? How much would an orange, a lemon? I mean, I'm just asking you, let's be realistic about the economics of labor in America. And I don't want to get off track, but we benefit from it, and yet we criticize it. So, to me, that is a hypocrisy.
Okay. Well, let's do this. I want to take a break, David, and when we come back from our break, I want to kind of switch gears from the larger picture of this, quote, deep state, close quote, and I want to talk about the firing of Director Comey, and then, David, I want to get your take on what you think that means for the country. Sure. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a few minutes to talk about the firing of James Comey and the appointment of special counsel for the Russia probe. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show. I've got David Cruz, veteran newscaster, here on the show with us. Got Kent Lee in studio with me. David, did you recognize that song and that music?
Well, I enjoyed it, man. I was jamming over here.
That's El Chicano, and the song is "Don't Put Me Down If I'm Brown." I remember that from my high school days. That's another part of the soundtrack of Gil's life.
All right.
Anyway, so listen, I think where I want to go next is, can we go to the video on Trump Fires Comey? Can we go to that video? I want to run this little video real quick, and then we'll come back and discuss it.
In the mind of people.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, we have major breaking news. We're interrupting that report. Jeff Zeleny, our senior White House correspondent, is joining us on the future of the FBI director. What are you learning?
A major development here this evening at the White House. The President of the United States has terminated the director of the FBI, James Comey. I talked to White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer a few moments ago. He has just released this statement. Wolf, let me read it along with you here. It says, today, President Donald J. Trump informed FBI Director James Comey that he has been terminated and removed from office. President Trump acted based on the clear recommendations of both Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Quote, the FBI is one of our nation's most cherished and respected institutions. Today will mark a new beginning for a crown jewel of law enforcement. A search for a new director is beginning as we speak here, Wolf. But interestingly, Wolf, this is coming on the exact day that James Comey had to clarify those comments. No one was expecting this at all, and a letter was given at the FBI, sent from here, the White House, over to the FBI just a short time ago, within the last probably 15 or 20 minutes or so, Wolf. So this is just coming in. We do not have reaction yet from the FBI, but this is just happening now. Of course, this is coming on the heels of the FBI director being, so central involved in this Russian scandal. Excuse my breath here, Wolf. I just ran out here to bring you this news. So as we get more here, we'll bring it to you. But at this point, a bombshell at the White House, James Comey is out.
Yeah. So that was earlier this week, or no, not last week now, I guess, right? It's been a couple of weeks. Here's my question for you, David. And, when I first heard about this, I thought, wow, this is pretty big. He fired the director of the FBI, and in fact, Comey was here in Los Angeles, and he was supposed to give a speech. I think he was actually giving a speech, some recruitment event somewhere, and on the TV behind him, the chyron was rolling the story that he was let go. But so David, here's what I wanted to know from you: when you heard this news, were you part of the group of people who thought, oh my God, he's trying to interfere or stop or somehow end the investigation of the probe of the Russians interfering with the elections? What did you think when you first heard this news, David?
No, my reaction, and I will be as transparent with you as I can be. That was not my first thought. My first thought was, well, this is Trump being Trump.
Right.
That's what I thought.
This is Trump being Trump. I mean, he does what he chooses to do when he chooses to do it. My automatic thought was not, it's a cover-up. Now,
okay.
By the way, let's get back to that reporter. First of all, Gil, this kid runs out there, he uses a lot of adjectives, he calls it a bombshell, da-da-da. He makes the connection on the heels of, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of inference, a lot of insinuation, et cetera, et cetera. A kid like that, reporting from the White House, begins to stir the pot. Look, the president has the right to fire the director of the FBI. Now,
correct.
If I were advising him, I would have said, if you're going to do this, let's set it up properly so that you don't have people thinking the other. But it's perfectly within his prerogative. It was also within Obama's prerogative. But let me ask this question. If Obama had fired Comey when he, in July, talked about the investigation with Hillary, etc.
Correct.
How would it have been construed then? So you see, it's a sword with two edges, man. And so this time it's Trump, then it was Obama. I think it's an unfortunate timing of the move, not the decision, but the move. I call it bad timing.
Okay. And I'll just tell you, I'll get your take, Ken, but when I heard the news, I thought exactly what you just said, David, and I thought, well, this is Trump being Trump. This is how he does things. And and for those of us like myself who voted for him, and he was not my first choice, for God's sakes, but you know, in my world, any day that I wake up and Hillary Clinton isn't the president is a good day. So But when I first heard this news, I thought, wow, you know, that's a bold move, and frankly, I liked the way he did it because it was kind of ruthless.
Okay, but let me say this, Gil. If it turns out now Mueller is in, and then the investigation proceeds, Trump has got to stay away from it now. The president has to stay away from it, and this thing has got to run on its own. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. You know, I think a lot of the drama around Trump is at his own doing. You know, it's clear to me that no one can control him when it comes to tweeting or whatever. I wish we could just take his phone away from him. I think, you know, I hated that this took over the news cycle when, you know, just 2 weeks ago prior, we were talking about the airstrikes in Syria, and he had, you know, wide support for that, and then the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan, and he's looking presidential around the world, and China wants to, you know, help us with North Korea, and things are looking good, and then all of a sudden, he fires Comey, okay, that's fine, but then the media takes it, the deep state media, I'm going to start calling them that now, the deep state media starts to do what that young guy just did on camera, and they have, you know, and if you watch the hearings the other day where McCabe, the interim director of the FBI, was testifying before the Senate committee, and I did watch that in its entirety, he was asked by Senator Marco Rubio, you know, does the firing of Comey impact the investigation at all? There was a report in the Washington Post about the resource. He was just about to ask for more resources, and that's why he got fired. And McCabe put all of those myths to rest. And so I thought, well, that's the end of it. And then the media takes it and does what it does.
It's irrelevant to the media.
Facts are irrelevant?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the more you talk about it, the more they're going to keep this alive. They're arguing about the subject matter is not going to make it go away. Telling the truth about the subject matter is not going to make it go away. They're involved in a process, and they're going to try and get rid of Trump. That's their goal, period.
So let me ask both of you this. Do you think that the appointment of Mueller as a special counsel now to – and as I understand it, David, the quote, Russia investigation, close quote, is not a criminal investigation. It's a counterintelligence investigation because nobody has committed a crime. They're actually trying to determine whether the Russian government and its hacking of the DNC and Podesta and whoever else they hacked and release of those emails, if that had any impact on the election last November, and if anyone from the Trump campaign colluded with them, which so far doesn't look like it's true.
Well, I'm glad that you included that second portion, Gil. I don't know. Do you? I don't know. So why don't we let the process work? And I would agree with Kent. Look, I would like President Trump to carry on with the business of the nation and ignore the news cycle.
Absolutely.
Just ignore it. Just ignore it. Let's get on about the business of the nation. Look, seniors are concerned about what's going to happen to them. They're terrified right now, Gil. They have every right. Your mama and everybody in that generation has every right. And the retiring baby boomers want to know what's going to happen with their retirement, and on and on. People want to know about health care. They want to know about jobs. You know, these are the things that the president, if I'm being asked, can and should focus on, and let these guys continue on their own. You can only argue with yourself so long.
I'd like to ask you a question, David.
Sure.
What exactly, in your mind, does the First Amendment give? What power does that give the media? Does it give them the media the possibility to report facts and news, or does it give them the right to commit crimes, lie, turn over and make public confidential, top-secret documents.
Well, not commit crimes. Not commit crimes. It doesn't allow them to do that, does it?
No, it shouldn't. And at what point does the media have responsibility? When does the Justice Department turn around and start prosecuting the media for what they're doing?
Kent, I wish I could answer each and every one of those questions that you've asked. Let me tell you a rule of thumb for me as a reporter. In my decades of reporting, I never got sued for a story. I never got fired for having filed a story that was disingenuous. I got slapped around a lot for having broken stories, but I didn't break the law. I operate by the standard that truth should prevail. However, I don't favor breaking the law to justify getting a story out first. I don't agree with that, and I also don't agree with cloaking opinion or disguising it as news. I believe that a messenger is nothing more. We were reporters. I was raised in the business when we were told we were window washers. We are nearly the ones. We are not even the ones who are doing the viewing. We are neither the ones doing the viewing nor the ones who are being viewed. We're simply trying to make it clear that should be our only task. We let the people decide. But today, it's about who can get a story out first, and then there comes the shading. And unfortunately, I think we've hired younger and younger reporters with less experience, and things become grayer and grayer. And now I have to tell you, I read a story, Kent, and I think about it, and I look for another source.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't find one, I take it with a grain of salt.
Well, I would think that they'd be so susceptible to getting sued civilly, and if the government was even functional and not on the take in its entirety, I would think that the Justice Department would step up and prosecute somebody for some of the things that they've done for the release of some of these documents.
But may I also say on the other side, and I'm really trying to be objective here, and this is just my opinion. The old cliche about don't kill the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't like the story, I think we need to really assess, is the story true or not? If it is a lie, that reporter and that network needs to have some kind of a consequence, because they're using public airwaves. They're licensed by the FCC. They don't own those airwaves. We, the public, own the airwaves. There should be a consequence to the behavior of journalists who abuse that right. And I don't care what network it is.
David, let me ask you this, because the whole story, this story about the Comey memo now, about the memo that Comey is saying where Trump asked him to, dial down the investigation of Mike Flynn.
Right.
Now, that, as I understand it, there was someone leaked to a Washington Post reporter. They actually read the memo to them. They didn't show it to them. Nobody has a copy of it. Nobody's seen it. It was somebody saying, this is what the memo said. And the Washington Post ran with that story. What kind of journalistic standard is that?
Maybe they should have checked in with Dan Rather and the story that was sent from a Kinko's. I mean, when you have somebody sending you something from a Kinko's, that ought to set off a few light bulbs, right? So if a reporter's getting a call and the editor who is overseeing that reporter has neither a copy nor corroboration of that document, that is insane to run with a story without having a second and even a third source. And to simply insert the word alleged does not justify it. So you and I we're not at opposite ends on that.
Right.
Look, guys, I got to tell you, we're losing a lot of credibility with the American public because I don't like the term fake news, but look, if something isn't true, it's a lie. There's no middle ground. It's either true or it isn't.
So what do we do, David? What do we as just everyday citizens, as a guy on a podcast, for God's sakes, trying to build a small business?
Here's what I would do.
What do we do?
Wait, but look what's. I didn't mean to cut you off, David. But let me ask you a question. We've seen citizen journalists, or they're now calling it alt left, alt right, and they're naming these journalists that are popping up on the internet giving them titles for the purposes of assassinating their character and keeping people from watching them. Where that's a byproduct of all the things that we're talking about. When there's such a significant problem, it causes for every action there's a reaction. The reaction is people are trying to break out from this so-called mainstream news and start their own journalism on a web broadcast.
And they should.
Yes.
And guess what? Audiences for programs like Gil's and others are responding to a need, the need of people to find out information on things that they care about from people they trust. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Well,
what's your question for me?
Let's go back to the deep state now. So these alternative journalists pop up and they start getting notoriety and start becoming popular, and they start getting attacked, and then you have people or organizations like Google and Facebook who are going out of their way to censor searches on search engines for these people and calling them fake news. They've become, even these companies have become a branch of the government. I mean, things are so out of control.
Well, because there's a lot of money at stake. I would tell you this, it's about revenue. So to try and address your question, Kent, and respond to yours, Gil, this is what we have done before, and I've been involved in movements. We go after the advertisers. We notify advertisers, the big ones, if you continue to support this kind of content, we will not support you. You'd be amazed how quickly something like that can influence editorial decisions. And it's the only power we have. Kent and Gil, the power of our pocketbook may be eventually our strongest voice. Where we spend our money, with whom and how. And if we don't want to be sheep being herded down one path or another, then we have to exercise our freedom of choice. That's how we do it. That's what America's about.
But
we can't stop them.
I totally understand that. I'm just not sure that that's an effective. I mean, there's no way.
Well, Gil,
there's no way to. There's no way
there's
no way to stop CNN or MSNBC from bringing on the folks that they bring on there to say the things that they're saying. And I watch just to know what they're saying, and because I spend a lot. I'm a news junkie, for God's sakes,
right.
and because I spend so much time reading stuff from everywhere, I can tell when something's when it's not accurate, and I'm like, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are watching this or reading this that are never going to go do the research. They're never going to know, but they're going to be influenced by what they see and what they read.
And their ratings suck, and the corporations that own them absorb any of these losses. They don't care because it's about an ideological message or it's about manipulation. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, so that's my question, David. How do we fight that? MSNBC with the lowest ratings on cable TV, for God's sakes, but they're still there.
Well, Gil, look, there's only a couple of ways. There's only a couple of paths to influence content on air. You're either going to have to legislate tighter controls that have to do with the use of public airwaves, which means we've got to influence lawmakers. We have to work on them so that there is legislative policy created. And in the meantime, I don't spend my money where I'm not wanted or I don't feel that I'm appreciated. That's what I do. That's my personal voice. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe it doesn't change you. Maybe it doesn't change someone else. Maybe it doesn't change CNN. But guess what? I don't spend my money with somebody I don't trust, I don't want to be a part of. That's what look, we have a great deal of power. We've not lost the voice. It is where we watch, where we spend our money. You think it doesn't have an impact. I can assure you, I've worked at these networks. They pay attention when advertising revenue starts to dry up.
For some reason, I get this idea that in some sense that's true, but that's also that narrative that people want you, that the deep state wants you to focus in on.
Well, you're right. You're absolutely.
When in actuality,
correct.
We're past this. We're so far gone.
Well, listen. You are right. You can just ignore it. Your strongest power is your wrist. Turn it off, push the button on your remote, ignore them. Look, spend your time influencing things that you can change. This would be my opinion.
Right.
and work on things where you can be heard, where you can make an impact. I tell people, you don't have to change the entire world. Change the world you live in. Look, I live in a school district here, Gil, where they just passed the most expensive bond issue in the history of California, and it's with the poorest, most misinformed people in the state,
right,
in this community in Ventura County. And, you know, it's unconscionable what these consultants do. Now, it's not geopolitical. It's right here in a small community. It's happening every day under our nose in district after district.
Right.
If you care about schools, that's one example. If you care about public safety, get involved with that. Do something. Don't just whine about it. Do something. Get involved. Get engaged.
And what you're saying, let me give you another example, the whole ESPN thing. How many people did they have to lay off? ESPN decided to get political. Right. And the reaction was people started canceling.
Yeah.
That's one reason they started canceling their subscriptions. I did. I got rid of DirecTV. I just watch things on the internet now, and I find that I get most of the things that I could have watched by paying $105 a month.
There you go. And look, I dropped cable. I have the basics. It does include CNN. I'm not paying $350 anymore for that kind of garbage.
No.
Bill, the point is, we're talking with our pocketbook. Multiply us by a few 100,000 or a few million. We can make an impact. That's firmly what I believe, and that's the way I live every day.
Well, yeah, I'm right there with you on that. There's a whole bunch of stuff I won't do. There's movies I won't go see because of who's in them and what things that they've said.
Here.
There you go.
But I do that, but I don't know that it has any impact. I'm sure, what's his name? The black comedian Jamie, what's his name?
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx, or that white comedian, that chick. I'm sure they don't even care. They don't care what Gil does. They don't care whether Gil buys a ticket or not.
It doesn't matter, Gil, but there's enough Gils around. You happen to have a show. You keep doing what you do. You will be heard. You will make an impact. My friend, it begins with one person. Global change begins with one person. Trump, when he first announced, people thought he was nuts. Look where he is now.
That's the truth.
Now, hey, Gil, look, it's not far-fetched. Run for a school board position. Do something where you can feel that you've got a voice where you live. And that's what I think we as Americans ought to be doing and can.
Yeah, Gil. Why don't you do that?
I don't know about that.
I'll vote for you.
Listen, David, I just want to touch one last topic with you, and then we're going to let you go. There's a lot of noise from Democrats about impeachment. And I was really surprised, actually, to see this. Can we run the Impeachment of Trump video for me, please? Let's just watch this real quick. It's a short one.
What do you say about the practical effect of some of your members? Let's say most recently Al Green, said this is time for impeachment. That word is getting thrown around. Yeah. Do you say to your members of your party, slow down? Because that is not a way to bridge any kind of divide with the Republicans.
No, but it's a reflection of what they're hearing in their own constituencies. But that's not, some of that is picked up this past week. But we've been out of session. I'll see them tomorrow when they come back. But they know I don't subscribe to that. In other words, again, if you're talking about impeachment, you're talking about what are the facts. Not I don't like him and I don't like his hair and I think what are the facts? I don't like what he said about this or that. What are the facts that you would make a case on? What are the rules that he may have violated? If you don't have that case, you're just participating in more hearsay. And that's not the basis of what we need. And we owe the American people some stability in all of this. This is the time where he's supposed to be having his honeymoon. What a marriage. The honeymoon of his. So we watch and see what he's going to do, what is his vision, how is he going to implement it, and the rest. And it's been sloppy.
I've never seen Nancy Pelosi be so rational in
so
my
lucid.
entire life.
It makes so much sense.
I'm highly suspicious of why that's happening. What do you say?
What do you think of that, David? What's when I was stunned that was Nancy Pelosi. I was like, okay.
Are you sure? It may be a duplicate. I don't know.
Yeah. well, there's something behind this. She wouldn't be out here saying this unless there was some grand scheme.
I'll tell you what I thought when I saw it. I said, number one, I don't believe I agree with Nancy Pelosi on anything. But number two, when I saw it, I thought, now that they're because I think this town hall happened before the appointment of the special counsel. But I think they really believe, David, that there's something there with regard to the Russians and collusion. And I really think that if they can press that investigation, that they're going to find something, and then they really are going to go for impeachment.
Gil, you asked me, what do I think about that? Is that what you're saying?
Well, just you can comment on the video if you want to, but just on this whole notion of this movement to impeach the president.
I am not a personal Pelosi fan. This is a woman who her entire political career has abused her office, flying private jets to and from her hometown. She became a multi-zillionaire on the public dole. I don't appreciate stuff like that. But label aside, here's what I will tell you.
Okay.
I think it's far too soon to start talking impeachment. This is a very serious step. It'll affect the entire nation. It'll affect the way the office is viewed. I think this is a time to let the process work, and may we all, kind of chill a little. As my granddaughter tells me, maybe we should all just chillax a little bit, relax and chill out, and just kind of, have a little tea and just let the process work, guys. And by golly, we've got to get past this. We have to find our way forward.
What happened to the special prosecutor when Barack Obama was in office? Where's the special prosecutor about the Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation? Why is it all of a sudden that the first 100 days or so of this guy's presidency, they're trying to impeach him? And suddenly,
there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But I think what Nancy Pelosi was just saying up there, I think here's what I have been saying to people, even George Holt here, and that is, let the guy be president, for God's sakes.
He has to be. But Gil, he has to be president. Look, I don't want to hear any more about the tweets. I don't want to even know when he farts. It doesn't matter. Here's what I want to know. I want to know that he's doing the job he was hired for. I don't want to know about the Trump Tower. I don't want to know about his wife or kids. I want to know that he's
his wife,
and he's doing the job. That's what I care about.
Yeah.
I care about the job. That's all, Gil.
I hear you.
Let's get down to business. Can he do the job? That's what I want to know. And if he can, great. If he can't, then, we'll know that. But right now, he's been elected. Let him serve.
Right. Well, I'm gonna close on that note, David. I really thank you for joining the show and spending so much time with us. I really do appreciate your experience in bringing that to the Right Along Radio Show.
Hey, listen, I'm your biggest fan, Gil. I always have been. You and I have had many a shootout on LA stations.
We have.
It's always been with respect, Kent. It's an honor to meet you.
You too.
Make a lot
again.
of sense. Let's all get together at some time.
That sounds great. Thanks, David. That was David Cruz, veteran, award-winning journalist, local news guy here in Los Angeles, and so lucky to have the contacts that we have, and people of his caliber willing to come on the show and lend their expertise. He's been in news for 40 years, and he's just a smart guy. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we're going to wrap the show. It's been a pleasure having you, Kent. It's been a lot of fun. It was a good discussion, man.
Yeah, I appreciate being here.
It was a good discussion, and I think George will appreciate that. It didn't get too crazy, and we didn't go out there. I had some other video that I wanted to run, but I just thought that the substance of the discussion was just so good, I just didn't want to interrupt it. So anyway, until next week, I'm Gil Contreras, or as I'm better known on the Morris Media Live page, I'm Gil O'Reilly. This has been Right Along Radio. I want to thank the POTUS, Felicia back there, for producing the show. I'd like to thank my guest, Craig Lally from the LA Police Protection League, David Cruz, my buddy and veteran news guy, Kent Kefauver for coming down from the compound, the bunker, the off-the-grid bunker. And you for watching and listening. As always, if you have comments, you can just drop them right down there in the box. George will be happy to note them down, and he'll probably talk about me. If you write about me, he'll read them on the air. And is that it? Did we have okay, that's it. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. I'm Gil Contreras. This is Kent Kefauver. This has been Ride Along Radio. See you next week.